how a game should be run. And the nice thing about the way that the flaw system works, and that a lot of the narrative elements of P&PUE works, is the fact that actually it does harken a lot to those games, of how those games are run, because even though, yes, when you're talking to a pure, immersion element of that, yeah, you still have a character sheet in front of you. Yes, you still have to take those things into consideration when you're playing those Powered by Apocalypse games. You still have to say, yeah, I'm checking off this box saying, yeah, I want to implement this thing into the game. That is negative to my character in some fashion, so that I can gain a benefit from it elsewhere in the mechanics. And and I don't think the system here derails or deviates from that at all.
No,
right.
I completely am a huge fan of this game. Like we talk about, we originally called it, and I stated to it is the superhero game for the 21st century. Because both styles of play can integrate fully at the table. You can look at the rules, and if you're a purist, old schooler, you're going to find lots of reasons to be frustrated, but you shouldn't, because you can totally play this game in traditional style,
right,
top to bottom. The die rolls are there. The GM can and there are times, by the way, as a GM, I'll go ahead and run old school. If you've been watching the demos, you'll see me do it sometimes. If I'm trying to move things along, I'll go ahead and say, let me grab the narrative here, guys, so I can just go ahead and move this forward. And I can run it like that. My players are fine with that, because they recognize that the dramatic impetus there is to kind of move things forward a little bit. And then I will take a moment every once in a while and go, okay, you know what? This is a key moment. This is a huge thing happened. You describe what just happened here. And the players love those moments put in their face. As a GM who ran Champions, I was the high priest of Hero back in Georgia, because I was the guy getting ready to run everything in Hero system. But one of the great game master, the shared fate, because a lot of GMs had the same problem, was hindrances. Hindrances were used to give your character extra points to build. That was their point. But the only reason why they had any meaning is if they actually came up and played. But as a GM, I was so busy just concerned about my bad guys and my plot and just keeping the players engaged. I have to really do a deep dive between sessions to intentionally pick out hindrances I was going to figure out a way to bring into play, because otherwise they were just sitting on the character for no reason at all. I think
watched by Viper.
Yeah, everybody had all these basically the 3-point hindrances, and if the player chose to bring them to play, then good on them. Savage Worlds, big credit to Shane and company on Savage Worlds, because that was the first time I encountered a situation where players were at least in some way encouraged to remind the GM of a flaw. In this case, it was a hindrance. Actually, in GM it's called disadvantages. I'm getting my terminology mixed up. But it's all the same thing. Disadvantages in Champions, hindrances in Savage Worlds. In Savage Worlds, a player was given some encouragement to go ahead and remind the GM, hey, I have this, because of this hindrance I have, I'm going to make this non-optimal decision. Because of this hindrance I have, obviously I'm going to lose my turn here in this combat, or that kind of thing. So at that point, and the GM go, oh, well, yeah, you should totally get a Benny for that. So it became something of a player GM interchange there. It didn't have to be. It was still primarily on the GM to bring it up, but the players plate or something to put in the bag of his own.
I've got lost one.
Okay, so sorry, just bad driving. I know it's just a thing, but it was driving me nuts. But the flaw system I adore, because I don't have to worry about it. That's one less thing on my plate as a game master I have to be concerned with, because my players have a reason to bring their flaws into play. My players have a reason to push the impetus of those flaws meaning something. So I don't feel like I'm cheesing that part of their character. That's on them to bring up. Now, it doesn't mean I still don't have to go in between sessions and go, oh, it's time to bring this flaw front and center for some story purposes. And there are certain plot point flaws that is absolutely true of enemy, relationship, and there are certain others like that. you automatically get to start with a free resolve every session because those are more intended as plot point ones. But even the ones that aren't like that, occasionally I will feel like it would be a cool idea to make sure I integrate a piece of the story where a certain flaw comes into play. And it's good to give the player a heads up about that if you can, but sometimes it's cool as a reveal too. It kind of goes into that social alchemy at the table thing. But my point is, this flaw system is such a relief to me as a game master because I don't feel like I'm cheesing the players or cheating them by ignoring something important to the character. They have a role to play in making sure that comes forward. And even though that's not traditional play, I love that aspect. I am from the old school. I love rolling dice and counting the numbers and seeing what happens. But gods, I also love some of the 21st century ideas of now run with the narrative of that. Now turn that into something exciting. And it doesn't have to just be me that turns it into something exciting. We all have a role to play in that. I love that part of this game.
So one thing I'm happy with is the fact it avoids the old GURPS thing where you had the green hunchback paraplegic,
right?
Which none of that would ever come into play, but that gave you all sorts of powers, right? Because you wanted all those points.
Okay, there's no wrong, bad fun. Let's be very clear. People who love GURPS have every reason to love GURPS. GURPS is a groundbreaking game, a definitive game in the hobby. A lot of people talked about the supposed rivalry between GURPS and Hero System. They borrowed thoroughly and liberally from each other,
right?
And with shame whatsoever. And in fact, Ray Greer worked for Steve Jackson Games for quite some time, and Aaron Alston did work for both Steve Jackson Games and Hero System. There was a lot of relationship and friendship between. So, there's a lot of it comes down to standing on the shoulders of giants. We all borrow liberally from each other to keep making better games.
Are you trying to say that Hero and System and GURPS was the DC and Marvel of their time, where they would borrow from each other liberally?
I would say even less so, just because
Aquaman, Namor.
I would say less so, just because there was a lot of crossover that was much more friendly.
And they had the DC and Marvel used to always would play golf every Tuesday.
Well, there you go then. Len, who's your rival?
I don't have one.
You don't have a nemesis? How
No
could you
one-
possibly be?
You know what? It's so funny that you're asking me this. I have a good buddy of mine. He's not an RPer at all. He's a brother from another mother kind of guy. At one point, we were talking about somebody he knows, and he said, "Somebody he knows," and somebody said, I say this or I do this, but that only applies to my enemies. Later on, he looks at me. He's like, "Who has enemies? Like we're adults. We're not comic book characters or 6-year-olds in a playground. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I have a lawn. I have kids and dogs. I don't have enemies. What are you talking about?" Anyway, it was just so powerfully dismissive. So yeah, no, I don't have a nemesis as far as I know, and I certainly don't hope to develop one.
Well, I don't know how you could be a proper mastermind then.
You know me well enough to know that I am many things, but a mastermind is certainly not
Maybe
one
that's
of
the plan of the mastermind. Make everybody friends so that there's nobody to oppose him.
Hey,
Yeah.
Alan's strategy.
Yeah.
Hey, does that mean that my plan is not good? Building the army of Doombots and a giant de-evolvo death ray?
That works as well. There's just a lot more upkeep.
I'm just saying that requires startup funds.
That's all the bank robbing's for.
That would be amazing to set up a fake Kickstarter, set yourself up with a whole supervillain ID, where the goal of the Kickstarter, you can't do an Indiegogo because it would fund whatever, and you don't want this. You don't want it to fund. But setting up a fake Kickstarter for like $100 million or something, where your goal is to destroy the moon or something like that.
The problem is you have to have a working prototype for Kickstarter.
Do you, if you're trying to destroy the moon?
If you do, I don't know if you do.
Yeah, you do.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you do.
Prototype.
Oh, let's just go fund.
Go fund me.
The
The problem is
you
that
have to have a
fun.
whole, you know, the people involved in this Kickstarter thing would be hysterical. It would be like you'd list your credentials as a supervillain and all your lackeys, whatever, below that.
Right.
You have a fake prototype video of stealing the moon. You know, and it's very, very clear that once you've stolen the moon, you don't really have a plan for what you're going to do with it after that. This could totally work. It could totally work. So, you know.
I don't know.
I have it. I have the moon.
Can you imagine the risks and guarantees section?
I want $50 million for the moon.
And like the highest level would be like lackey with like immunity, where even if you mess up, I won't kill you, probably. You know?
Maybe.
Oh, that might actually be fun.
I may not kill you.
Well, what's that? Didn't Cards Against Humanity have an empty box supplement, which was literally an empty box? It's like there's nothing in the supplement. Don't
would not surprise me.
Don't support this. There's nothing in here. It is an empty box, and it funded. I think
they funded to go dig a hole.
Yep.
There you go. There you go. Now,
They literally said, "Hey, pay us money. We're gonna go dig a big hole. The more money you pay us, we're gonna dig a bigger hole." And it funded.
Fantastic. Now, look, if you do that for charity, that's phenomenal. Obviously, you do something now. The whole. You know what? That might be a phenomenal charity thing. I'm thinking about that now. Maybe you do that for a supervillain, a P&P supervillain, whether it's Baron Bane or somebody else. You know, Baron Bane looking to destroy the moon or whatever. But the reality, obviously, all the money goes to charity. Now that you'd want to do on Indiegogo because it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, whatever you collect, you then donate that to charity.
Right.
That's not a bad idea. Now that we're talking about that, we may need to think about that. That would be a really good. That'd be a really good thing to look into. Interesting. Excuse me a second. I actually have to write that one down. Yeah.
Steal the moon. Can I at least get an army of death bots out of it?
No.
No?
Sure you can.
There you go.
Can I at least get an orphan and
It'll be
raise them by...
stressful.
Maybe.
Do a Kickstarter for an empty box to put all your P&P stuff in.
Don't say yes to Scott. It ends badly. All right, guys, listen. I need to, I think, vanish for a bit. I will be back on later. I can't specifically say when as of yet. So I wanted to thank everybody for your participation, for everybody who's watching, everybody who's paying attention, everybody who's thinking about funding and thinking about pledging. Thank you so much for even considering us. Thank you for everyone who's involved. Thank you for participating. I will say it again and again every time. Couldn't do this without you. Reason I wrote this thing in the first place was because I like this stuff, and I thought, hey, if I can make some people happy, awesome. One of the best things I've gotten in terms of the original P&P was an email I got from some guy who's like, hey, I played this with my son, and he had a great time. That just made my week. So long and short, thank you so much. I will be back. Yeah, the world needs heroes, but it's very clear to me that the world has some right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Take care.
So what we are waiting on right now is for Corinne to get back from the printing place so that we can have a book to start character creation with. And once she has come back with that, then we will go ahead and get started with the people that are here. And we'll go ahead and let some people on the feed here participate as well. So we'll certainly get started once that happens. So otherwise,
Song and dance.
song and dance.
So how about those? How about those Romo Greek gorillas?
Robo Greek gorillas.
Yes. Robot gorillas that have that whole Greek theme going.
Sure.
This is what happens when I start designing stuff.
You get cool villains.
I've been working on a pulp thing forever, and that's what Sean was talking about. Because it's kind of gone to the sooner or later I'm going to actually have to put this in a format that we could actually put in the Omniverse, and this is the kind of stuff I come up with: bank robbing mummies, Robo Greek gorillas,
Greco-Roman gorillas,
Greco-Roman robot gorillas, half ape, half machine, all Roman. You're looking at me like you really do when I come up with ideas.
Well, the thing is, I know I specifically encouraged this one idea.
Yes, you did.
Yes, you did.
I also collect miniatures, and he's got these gorillas that are dressed up like Roman centurions, and he gave them to me, and I think it just added to my weirdness.
So while we are chatting and other stuff, what I'm doing is going around and getting materials together for my game for later, just because it's in my head right now.
There you go.
Riah, come help. Come on, Riah.
Meanwhile, poor Cory's trying to play ringleader, and I'm not being that much of a help.
And I'm just putting out random things to break Cory. It's incredible.
It's Scott, so it's not hard.
And see, this is the stuff I realized that I could that probably wouldn't be too off the wall.
So actually, I'm going to take a break from this and switch out with you.
Okay.
Mostly it says, I realize I need to sit down for a second. Oh.
Take it, that's your favorite chair.
Well, it's the chair that's on the GM side of the table, really. My favorite chair is actually in my office. Where did Len go?
He had to take off, so.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, very good then.
Had to disappear for a while. So.
Do you want to send a text to Jay, see if he wants to come out with it?
I'm pretty sure that the Justice League alarm went off, and you had to go to the watchtower.
So, Jonathan? That would be cool.
Where do you want this to live?
I don't have a place for it yet.
Fantastic.
Just wanted to make sure it was in here.
All right.
So I mentioned earlier Jonathan Kotbagan, Jonathan Kotbagan, J Pants, I like to call him.
Mm-hmm.
His first experience with gaming at all is in the system. So we're going to see if we can get him to come over and hang out.
There you go.
So you know what? Let's have fun. Let's call him live online.
Live in front of an online studio audience.
Yeah, that would be fun. I'm sure it's it gets fun by certain people's definitions anyway. Okay, apparently Mark Morgan's going to go ahead and start working on Stealing the Moon as a kid.
If you get that going, sir, I will volunteer myself to be on that video.
Yo, J Pants, you're live online with me right now, so say hi to the world.
Hello, everybody.
So we were talking about you earlier. The 24-hour countdown party has started for our Kickstarter, and Jennifer mentioned, hey, we may want to see if you wanted to come and hang out at some point. So just thought I would let you know we're here if you want to come and hang out and be a part of the crazy.
Wonderful. I'll swing by at some point.
Sounds good. We're doing this for 24 hours. Well, we're down to 21 and 21 hours, 45 minutes remaining. So, you better hurry because,
Time is limited.
Yeah, that time's clicking.
Anyway, I just thought, we'd see if you wanted to come and hang out and maybe you talk about your first experience with gaming in Prowess and Paragons.
Wonderful, yeah. I'll try to make a run over there right now. My little foot's out on an adventure with Kristen, so I've got to figure out what they're doing.
Roger that. No problem at all. Looking forward to where we actually get some dice in her hand at some point too.
For sure.
All right, brother.
Have a wonderful day.
Cheers, J Pants.
There you go.
Now, there's a reason we call him, but that's a story for him to tell.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of makes you a tease.
Yeah, doesn't it? All
Well,
right.
gotta.
We're doing a live show.
Yeah, I was about to say, gotta keep us going for 24 hours somehow.
That is in fact true. Now, Dale, I'm incredibly grateful to have you on, but if you got to roll, don't worry about it because I pulled you into this in the beginning and you've been hanging, which is awesome. You know, you are by no means committed to stay the whole time. So,
I love as you add more people, the screen starts seeing that Brady Bunch feel.
yeah, right?
Right?
That's kind of cool. Let's check the numbers, as Kai Rizdal is fond of saying. I keep making that marketplace NPR reference. We are at $32,427 with 452 backers.
Nice.
That is outstanding.
Yes, it is.
Outrageous.
So, yeah, just checking their comments, make sure I'm not losing out on anything going on over there. I have tried to get this thing to simulcast over to Facebook, and thus far have had little luck with it. A real quick question for those who are watching online in the chat. I've got music playing on in the background. Is it too loud, too soft? What's your opinion?
It's not bothering me.
So it is okay, says David Parker. Okay. I'm going to try one more time to see if I can simulcast this out to Facebook Live. It was not working the last few times. It kept wanting me to do weird tech stuff that I was not prepared to do. Just because I have no idea how to do it. Before, it just sort of worked automatically. It had an automatic integration. Nope, it's still giving me that weird screen that I have no idea how to interpret. I would need a serious tech head to figure this thing out. So unfortunately, the simulcast to Facebook's just not going to happen. I will say this, and it's just really going to be better for those who are hanging out now, but we'll pass the word along as we go. There is a point at which this thing supposedly, the system itself stops working, and that is it's scheduled to stop being functional tomorrow. Tomorrow is supposed to be the last day that it stops. Now, I don't know if that means like at midnight EST it stops, or if it'll actually, at least keep going to the end of our thing and it'll stop sometime later tomorrow. I don't know. So the plan is to have it, we'll keep going here, but if at any point it just shuts down, we will transfer over to Facebook and we'll go to my Facebook. No. We will go to the Prowlers and Paragons official page and go live there. So help me press the word around. That's my daughter, everyone, Samantha Seabolt. Samantha, I was her first game master. Now this was back doing Savage World stuff quite a few years ago, but she is a big fan of the Prowlers and Paragon system.
Yes,
in fact,
I've actually been playing something similar to this thanks to Dad, starting when I was about 11 with a character named Opal.
There you go.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and share something with you guys, if I can find it quickly. I will find it. So Modern Gods is one of the stretch goals, and we're going to maintain high hopes for what we can unlock. I will say that the full Modern Gods book is probably destined for a future Kickstarter, and I'll talk about Evil Beagle Games Kickstarter plans for the rest of the year in a short bit. But let me.
But first, is your pet psychic?
And that's why Scott's here.
Follow on. I want to hear more about this.
That's the joke. Is we're going to tell you we're going to reveal the new report. But first, is your pet psychic?
There's supposed to be a follow-on there, as far as I'm concerned. All right, so what I'm going to share with you now, since it's to celebrate Sammy joining us, and she has a particular happiness about this. This is the opening fiction for the Modern Gods setting. The whole point behind this piece is to really kind of pull you into what Modern Gods is about as a setting.
The building was on fire and it wasn't my fault.
That's a different opening fiction. one of the best first lines in a novel ever.
She walked into my office. I knew she would be trouble.
Oh, jeez.
Especially since I think she was already dead.
Let's let Dad do his thing.
Okay, fine. All right. So I will try to do a little bit of voice acting here, but I am an amateur, so give me a break.
You are so not an amateur.
WNN's Candice Umizaki is on the scene of this historic state dinner hosted by the French president and her husband. Thanks, Chaza. This gathering of European Union and other Western leaders is quite the event, and security is very high, along with a very strong UNISO security presence, including Storm Warden members Psy, Warrior Woman, and Coyote. France's premier super team, Garde d'Honneur, patrols the streets and the skies. Side note, if I pronounced that badly, I don't know French, so I'm sorry. Inside, President Josephine Berquet is among the host of Earth dignitaries welcoming Determinor Azrakor of the Meldanian Empire. President Berquet and many of the EU heads of state are hopeful this signals a chance for peace between the Empire and Earth, even though the United States, Canada, England, and Australia joined the Republic Alliance representatives here on Earth in condemning this move as a betrayal of the long-standing coalition between our planet and the Alliance. Chizazo, President Campos of the United States vidcast just before this gathering, calling it the EU's Chamberlain moment. Is that what led President Berquet's barely veiled threat to pull her primary diplomats out of the U.S., Candace? That's the current buzz here in France, Chaz. However, wait a moment. Something's happening. Chaz, it looks as though a large contingent of Fae just arrived, many of them in arms and armor. I'm getting reports they use the Arc de Triomphe as a portal in from Avalon, and there seems to be a kind of herald, I guess, who is using some kind of power to be heard. Hang on, Trey, get the camera on her. We'll not stand by as the leaders of Europa betray the blood price we've paid to defend this world. Either our emissaries will be welcomed within to present our grievances, or we will drive the evil that is Determinor Azrakor from this sacred soil. Candace, it's gotten really quiet. Can you tell us what's going on? Sorry, Chaz, and forgive me whispering, but silence has fallen on these proceedings as the Storm Wardens and Garde d'Honneur arrived to stand in front of the Fae. The elvish sorceress who serves with the Storm Wardens, Opal, is standing between the two factions, alight with what I presume is a magical energy of some kind. Warrior Woman, Defensor, and the apparent leader of the Fae are approaching her and are all speaking too quietly to hear. This situation is threatening to spiral out of control, and French and UNISO security personnel are trying to move everyone back. So there you go, folks. That is the opening fiction piece for Modern Gods, where you have a representative of an interstellar empire meeting with the EU representatives while the United States and certain other countries are protesting in alliance with another interstellar faction. And the Fae just beam in from Avalon through the Arc de Triomphe to present their grievances and possibly start a war on French soil. So that is a very important part of what Modern Gods is about. The tagline is, a world with paranormals becomes a paranormal world. Modern Gods is meant to represent that paranormals and superheroes and stuff have been around for quite some time. In fact, gods have existed as basically superpowered beings from the ancient times, and they have impacted that world. That's the whole point for Modern Gods. The other thing about Modern Gods for you Champions fans is that it is meant to be an unabashed love letter to 4th edition Champions Universe era. So there's a lot of characters that are unique to the setting, but there's a lot of characters who are love letters, homages, and even doppelgangers to 4th edition Champions Universe characters that you might remember and love. Obviously, a lot of the ones that I created for High Tech Enemies, Mutant File, and other stuff, you're going to find their compatriots there. For example, there's a guy named Visor, who has a thing that he has on his head and has uncontrolled optic blasts, and he frequently feels he's getting picked on. Certain Champions fans will recognize who that is. Mm-hmm. Instead of Dr. Destroyer, I have a character named Arcos, but they have a very similar profile and role within the world.
And Arcos is a pain in the butt.
Well, I'm
Team Arcos.
I'm not.
If you guys remember Master Control from High Tech Enemies, which was my major master villain, a gentleman named Iron Monarch might be recognizable to you. So that kind of thing. So I had the honor of being the continuity editor for the Champions universe during the 4th edition era. So I did a lot of work in doing a cohesive universe building kind of thing. And then at one point, the Champions universe went a completely different direction than where I was going, and I was no longer involved. But a lot of the work I did in trying to create an internally consistent universe, you will find embedded in Modern Gods. In fact, if you know the Shintar setting at all and how much I worked very hard to create internal consistency with the rules of magic and the rules of spirituality and the way the world interacted with itself, that same love and that same idea applies to the Modern Gods setting as well. So, you know, that's Modern Gods. So that's one of the settings that we're going to be coming out with for Prowlers and Paragons. You know, Leonard is working very hard on creating an integrated core experience with Pinnacle City and the world that surrounds that setting. So you'll have that to play with, which is really cool because you can easily plop Pinnacle City into an existing campaign that you want to build off of. So that works really, really well as the core default setting that comes out via the core book to a degree, but it really doesn't get into a lot of setting stuff in the core book. But the Pinnacle City's Most Wanted book really does start to present a lot of that. And if you've been in the 1-hour demos, you've seen bits and pieces and glimpses of what we're trying to do there. But we had, you know, Scott has already, like I said, he's talked about his, what was it called? Age of
Pulp is the working title right now.
Age of Pulp as a very, very pulp flavored setting with the two-fisted, you know, Golden Age pulp type heroes. I'm actually really intrigued by what Cory is talking about. So not everything will necessarily be a standalone setting book, by the way. A lot of stuff that we want to do will be stuff to supplement your campaigns with really cool ideas that you can insert into whatever campaign setting you're using. Or they may be things that supplement an existing setting. So we're going to have all the different kinds of pieces and support materials that you can think of. So, you know, one of the things I'm looking forward to talking to Cory about is this idea of let's do a book that gets into, you know, the new characters, the new heroes, and what their lives may be like, and how to do a campaign like that. I think it could be a really awesome supplement that could go with any of the campaign settings, really, or most of them at least. And again, we're looking forward to Bill being here around 4 o'clock or so, and we'll talk to him about his very 90s era Iron Age setting, Blood and Justice, Shadows of Nocturne, or Welcome to Nocturne City. I can't remember which the subtitle on that one is. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, it's one of those two. But Blood and Justice, I know, is the core thing. And it's very much the pouches and knives in RAR Iron Age with some weird conspiracy mystery stuff going on. Okay, so, okay, never mind. I was just noticed the thing where Len was saying he couldn't hear, but so then we've already mentioned Michael Serbrook, who'll be here later on this evening. We'll take a break from the gaming to give him a few minutes to talk about Well of the Worlds, which is a Lost Worlds very interesting setting that we've been playing. And a lot of people want to ask questions about, you know, how does it feel to play characters that are basically human? We started out, Jennifer's in this game, I'm in this game, Corinne plays, a couple of others are in that one. Jonathan Cabogan is who's the Cabai is in that one. Cabogan. I can never get it right. J-Pants. J-Pants is in that game.
No, now his name is Cabogan. That's it.
J-Pants Cabogan is his name.
Cabogan?
J-Pants Cabogan is his band name. That's his name in the band. Whatever the band name is, his name in the band.
That name, of course, now is J-Pants Toboggan.
No, he's J-Pants Cabogan. He's like the bass player. God, I got 10 J. Anyway, Well of Worlds, we started at a 6-die trait cap. Now, understand, in Prowlers Paragons, it's 1 to 6 dice is human range. So our trait cap was 6 dice, and none of us had powers at all. We had, I think, 50 points to build.
Sure. Yeah, 40, 50.
We had 50 points to buy our abilities and our talents, and that was it. And then whatever gear made sense for our character concept, flying on a plane to Bermuda. That was it. Now, I was playing an Irish cop who was working for Interpol, and so I had my stuff stored in my secure stored in the hold. It was basically the Republic of Ireland Federal Police called the Garda, which is why his hero name is now Garda, not Captain Ireland, as some people have said. Though yes, he totally used it and everything because his whole thing was, and I'll explain this in a second. Anyway, so I was at there was Jonathan's playing a Cirque du Soleil performer who was on vacation. Jennifer was playing a toy maker with a lot of engineering background, but she has physical infirmities that make it difficult for her to move. Corinne was playing a Ren Fair person who does tours of Ren Fairs and basically as a merchant to different Ren Fairs and stuff, and so on. So we had people, right? People with interesting backgrounds, because that's what we wanted to play, but people. And we started out with our normal human abilities and whatever gear we could salvage from a crashed airplane, because our plane crashed in the Bermuda Triangle in this weird, strange world. Nobody else was there. Like, the plane was empty except for us. It's like the people had somehow been Judgment Day lifted out of the plane or something. We weren't sure, but we were able to salvage all of their stuff and create like sleds and drag stuff around. And we just started exploring the world and dealing with things as people. And the game works beautifully at that level. Way better, I think, than even Len was expecting, because he designed this to be a game for superheroing. But it worked at that level. And the idea is that, Michael had us each write out what characters dreamt of, what our hopes were, what our fantasies were, things that drove our emotional state. And then over time, we started waking up. Like, every day we'd wake up and we had a slight change, and suddenly we had abilities we didn't have before based on those dreams or those fantasies or those ideas. So Jennifer's character started developing the ability to interface with technology. And this world has some weird hidden technology that most people don't have access to. But when she encounters it, she can wake it up and interact with it. And she can gadget stuff. And actually, using just her technology skills, she started early on gadgeting stuff for us. My guy started training with, the various weapons that the people used, but I got really good with the shield and eventually just gave up all the other weapons and started just using the shield, freaking people out because I would throw it at people. I'm like, why would you throw your shield away? But it would come back, so it was okay. And that kind of stuff.
Kind of like Captain America's shield.
Exactly that. So, and he became stronger and faster, totally that kind of vibe. So each person started developing these skills. And so Michael's setting will be about how a GM assigns powers over time, over a very slow, gradual period of time, to do that slow buildup of developing abilities in a strange new world, which, again, not how the core rules are written, but they work beautifully for it. So Well the Worlds is a fantastic exhibit of doing a completely different kind of that starts you as humans and then you work your way forward. Kaze 5 is going to be a completely different setting as well. It's going to be anime punk, which is literally the cyberpunk concept mixed with the anime look and feel, and Akira and Ghost in the Shell and all of those kinds of things. This setting will be all about that kind of thing. There's some discussion going on about San Angeles, which, yes, you've played in that one, which is effectively.
And it's actually one of the few horror games that I'm actually able to play without feeling any kind of remorse.
In San Angelo, City of Heroes, which is a very, very highly well-received champion setting done by Gold Rush Games and my very, very dear friend Mark Arsenault, he has gotten involved. He's a backer, and he has already said he wants to do a revival of San Angelo. And he's been sharing images that he created for the original San Angelo, and he's updating stuff. He wants to do San Angelo revival using Prowls and Paragons. Oh my God!
I'll pay money for that.
That is huge, right?
Right now.
And then Leonard was like, and we weren't going to mention Siege of the Sky Realms, so don't discuss that one. Discuss Siege of the Sky Realms. You're carrying around giant swords like they do in Final Fantasy, Berserker, and what are the other ones I'm going to try to think of? All those animes that are like the crazy over-the-top fantasy with superpowers, giant, fists, and was it Iron, Full Metal Alchemist? I think is another one. Anime fantasy, superpowered kind of stuff that maybe you could even do Last Airbender and things like that with. No, we're not going to talk about that at all, are we?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we talk. Yay, Corinne is back. She has brought the thing. All the love. This, my friends, is the absolute latest pre-printout, pre-layout, pre-everything version of the rules. Yes, I'm totally cheating. I can have this because why? I helped write it. So, there it is.
True story there.
Hey, by the way, Sean, with this Omniverse thing, could we have crossovers?
Oh, well, yeah, we've already talked about the crossovers. Wow, she's got some serious sneezing going on there. So the Omniverse, we've we have discussed the omniverse concept a few times, where we're talking about crossovers between various realms and dimensions and stuff like that. Basically, all the different settings can totally interact with each other via the idea of the omniverse. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, I saw movement. I'm like a hawk. You know, my perception was really high. Can't even stand by it. There was no straight face in the room when I said that, and there shouldn't have been. I have the worst perception roll.
It's okay, you're pretty.
It's a D4
right.
-7.
So real quick, I'm going to do one more thing, and then we're going to start setting up. I'm going to turn the chair back over to Cory and Jennifer, and they're going to lead us through the starting process of doing a character creation and sort of a section 0-ish idea for this campaign idea that he was talking about. I'll let him do like a recap of what he said before. But I do want to share this with you guys. I haven't had a chance to do this yet, and I think this will be fun. This is the foreword that I wrote for Prowlers and Paragons Ultimate Edition, because it's kind of an interesting thing where people had known that I was talking about doing a superhero game. And I was actually working on this about 5 or 6 years ago. And this is how that stopped being a thing. Handfuls of dice. That was the superhero game I was going to design, develop, and publish. Len Pimentel killed that idea with a 20D penetrating blast right through the chest. I'm oddly okay with that. Let me explain. January 2014. Sean furiously scratches out all kinds of notes, talks to friends, makes more notes, plays with outlines and structures, comes up with the following manifesto for his design goals. Strong thematic builds encouraged. Flexibility with powers. Fun to play, fun to run. Fun to create characters. Quick build for last-minute characters. Ultimately, I'm trying to combine newer design ideas with an emphasis on narrative influence and fast and easy gaming. Some very retro stuff. Huge handfuls of dice, crunchy hit then damage resolutions. I wanted to create the game that my friends wish to play, and I will truly enjoy running. Hopefully that will translate to something lots of other folks enjoy as well. May 2015. Sean's playtesting this bad boy, getting all kinds of feedback. He adds in more and more stuff to fill everything out. Campaign scale chart, categories for the different levels of abilities, the different ways characters are designed. So much stuff. Then the word is given. Savage Rifts is a reality, and Sean's life will brook no other game design on anything else. That's true, by the way. So Savage Rifts was the most complicated thing I've ever been involved in, and holy crap. But Sean wants to play superheroes. So yeah, I had to shelve HOD, but I couldn't dump my desire to run a supers campaign in my modern god setting. I needed a good system for it, something that at least got close to my specific ideas. So I went looking again. I'd already tried running Modern Gods and my other Super World Unending War in just about every single superhero RPG rule set there is.
No, I'd say probably literally every.
Ask my belovedest Corinne, Evil Beagle's editor-in-chief. The poor woman endured countless iterations, reboots, and reconfigurations, and more than a few attempts to hack existing. Nothing ever quite got where I wanted to go. Seriously, I actually had a personal conversation with Steve Kenson about hacking icons, and he told me flat out, he said, I don't see how this is going to work for you. I love my game, but it's not going to work for what you want. He was right. You have to understand what I was looking for. A super RPG rule system that somehow evoked all the great things I remembered fondly about Champions, specifically the 4th edition era, which is when I wrote extensively for it, while also fulfilling the promise of easier access, fast play gaming, and that is the hallmark of current game design. Having a bit more narrative impetus as part of the experience was another element of 21st century RPG thinking I wanted to incorporate. That's where the work on Handfuls of Dice started, and what I had to put aside. I went looking for one more time to see if there was any game that might get close to what I'd hoped for. I took a look at a couple of top 5, top 10, and best of lists online that talked about superhero games. Then I started looking for quite a few more, noticing a game I'd not really paid attention to before showing up time and time again. Prowlers and Paragons. I grabbed it, read it, and realized with abject shame that I had seen it before and summarily dismissed it as, quote, one of those frou-frou narrative games that didn't really try to be a real game.
Dishonor on you, dishonor on your
cow. Yeah. Let me explain. When I first encountered it, I was in a crotchety, grognard kind of headspace about light narrative games. I got over it, and myself, but my first encounter with the game was in light of that preconception, so I didn't really give it the attention it deserved. Worse, it was something a dear friend had shown me, a guy named Leonard Pimentel, who I met at Gen Con a few years ago, thanks to Corinne, and in the moment of that meeting discovered one of those human beings that you just know you're going to be best friends forever with. As always, he and I have Corinne to thank for that. He played in the game she ran, and she somehow knew she had to introduce us. Thank you, love. But I just didn't grasp it then, put it aside, and continued my search, which eventually led me to handfuls of dice. Then Savage Rifts had to be done, so I had to find a system to fill in, and you've read this part already, right? Okay. So here I am, re-encountering this game that's getting all kinds of new love, and I'm really reading it for the first time. 10 minutes later, I'm dialing Len's mobile. His voicemail picks up, and I practically scream into it, "Pimentel, you magnificent bastard! I read your book!" If you didn't hear that voice, you've missed out on one of the greatest character studies disguised as a war movie of all time. Fix that. A few minutes later, he calls me back. We laugh, we cry, we completely redevelop the entire thing, and now you have what I predict will go down in RPG history as one of the greatest superhero RPG systems of all time. What happened to HOD? Will I ever finish it? No need. Took my best ideas, married them to this extraordinary engine, and made something so very much better. Len Pimentel is one of the most talented game designers in this industry that you probably don't know about. I believe this is the game that changes that. I'm honored and thrilled to have had a part in making this better, but it was already pretty damn good because he's just that clever and that talented. I might have added a few good things here and there, so you're the beneficiary of that combined effort. We started from an amazing foundation of Len's crafting. Go forth, tell amazing superhero stories, and know that I'm genuinely looking forward to you telling me about your character at the next convention we see each other. Now, where's my giant bag of D6s? So there it is. That is my forward for this fantastic game and the story of handfuls of dice and my last attempt to do my own game and give up because this game is just that much better. All right. So having shared that, we now, as I said, have a full, most recent iteration of rules that we can go on to. And I'm going to turn the table over to Jennifer and Cory, and I'm going to be a player for a little while.
There you go.
Making it. So here we go.
So we're gonna run a game with all your shit on the table.
Oh, I asked Cory if it was okay.
I don't need to worry about stuff on the table.
Do you want more folks?
That's the stuff on the table. That's the stuff
Thank you.
inside.
In that
Like
case, something to
losing my vision.
Is Kylie here?
Yeah, where's Kylie?
babysitting
Okay.
All right.
for her aunt.
All right, just pulling something up real quick.
That's fine.
So one of the things that has been that I had been going through over the last year or so was constantly getting information or rule sets from other designers about superheroes, specifically like the P&PUE setting or the rule set, and the AMP setting and rule set, and I had been kind of contemplating, well, what would make a fun game for me to run, and I kind of started typing up something about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, kind of let it lie for a while, and then about a week ago I started really thinking back to it, and I pulled up some old the old type that I wrote up, and I started writing it out more, and it started realizing that something that really always intrigued me about superhero settings was that that journey from being just imbued with that power to becoming the superhero that everybody knows. So what I started writing was very much an origin story for a campaign that will delve into that. And I shared that with Jennifer, and we started coming up with some ideas about what sort of game does that look like. And so that's what we're going to experiment with today. I wrote up a big long narrative thing. I'm not going to read it because my voice is still trying to recover from being sick.
Jennifer can read it.
Huh?
Jennifer can read it.
Jennifer can read it if she would like, but I'm not going to. I was just going to sum it up.
And just to give you a
Let me explain. No, wait, there is too much. Let me sum up.
Did anyone not see that coming?
Yeah.
Quick, I can explain, but there's no time. We've got to save the moon from Kickstarter.
What?
Huh?
That makes
Yes, we're
no
there.
Scott Brosnan,
sense.
ladies and gentlemen. Scott Brosnan.
Yes, we're there for that discussion.
All of the non-sequiturs.
There was a conversation about
Wait a
starting a
minute.
Kickstarter
To kidnap the moon.
to capture the moon. Yeah.
Well, okay then. Moving along.
This is me. I come up with the non sequiturs, so you don't have
And I usually strike it.
So
You want me to?
go ahead. Or you can pull it up on my computer so you can read it. Actually read it.
This is already here. The process is simple. We start by the doctor started to trail off into a long diatribe of science babble. He finished after a few moments and looked at the assembled uniformed ladies and gentlemen before him, expecting looks of understanding. Instead, he got, I'm sure that all seems simple to you, Doctor. However, to us old soldiers, can you explain that in layman's terms? Almost exasperated, the doctor heaved a sigh. Of course, Colonel. To break it down, we transform the normal human cells into a modified cell that harnesses the new power source we have introduced to them. By that, we have the ability to enhance the battlefield performance of the host. The Colonel smiles at the doctor. How much enhancement are we looking at? Nearly a factor of 12, the doctor replied. Let's see this in action, shall we? The ensemble moved out of the boardroom and into a warehouse where the individuals are training on various equipment. Each of the individuals, all of various ethnicities, bodysuit that has various sensors attached to vital areas of the body. Another individual wearing a lab coat watches the trainee and monitors a data pad that records what the sensors pick up. The F-12s, as we call them, can come from any walk of life, the doctor continued. As they walked through, they could see a slender young woman lifting a barbell with enough weight to challenge even the biggest male bodybuilder. As you see, Subject 34 has the strength of someone twice her size and more than 3 times her mass. She comes from a small town outside Moscow. As they looked around, indeed, each of the subjects came from a different ethnicity, also displayed a different power. One of them was shooting blasts of energy from his hands, while another was seen jumping incredible heights. This is all well and good, Doctor. These feats are amazing, to say the least. But there's a certain mentality to make a soldier, especially a good one. What makes these individuals capable of becoming soldiers, or more specifically, what is it that allows them to develop these abilities? Said a heavy-set man in a designer suit. I'm glad you asked, Senator. The genetic profile of each subject was carefully mapped. There are definitely markers that need to be present for the procedure to take effect. Without them, the individual is simply a carrier. As for their mental faculties, those too are enhanced. Their cognitive abilities have learning at exponentially faster rates and abilities. The senator started to look annoyed. But to your real question, Senator, the doctor continued, they are controlled into behaving by a very simple method. That which is given can be taken away. The doctor smiled. The source of their powers is an energy source. We can simply turn off that source like a switch. This time the senator smiled. I already know the next question. How do we prevent them from being shut down by just anyone? That is simple. Each has a unique genetic sequence. We have keyed that sequence to the energy infused within. Thus, you would need the specific code for that individual, much like a computer network password. I don't think I should read the last part, since that's going to be like the introduction to the actual campaign.
Oh, you can still read it. It does not. It's not going to affect the players.
Well, no, but our live studio audience wants the experience of the surprise.
Okay.
I do believe the producer has made a judgment call on the floor.
Yeah.
I will read this last part.
Fine.
I mean the
And the writer's overriding me.
No, the very last part. That is past the last part you were reading.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
So the F12 setting campaign is designed to explore the mature aspects of being a young adult suddenly imbued with tremendous power. Think the image in the 90s after the comic code was abandoned. Since the characters are not fully realized heroes yet and a bit on the inexperienced side, the character creation will start with a few starting points. Some of the setting explores the mystery of how they got their powers, the project experiment they've all been subject to utilizes energy of some kind. Being able to explore what that energy is, where it comes from, how it is controlled, are all part of the F12 experience. So that is where we are starting.
So the campaign is called F12?
Yep.
By the way, do keep an eye out for if anybody's got any questions.
And of course, I grabbed one with no lid.
It's funny.
There's one.
So do we have an extra player that is not sitting at the table?
Dale said he's going to just listen in for now. So,
All right, that's cool.
But Dale, you are welcome to join us if you want.
Okay.
All right, so the only way that this is going to be even mildly entertaining for our live studio audience of, untold hordes that are watching us over the interwebs is going to be if the people currently sitting at the table and who are coming up with their amazingly clever ideas actually verbalize them and not just scribble them onto the paper.
So yeah, I fully intend to go through my decision process, but what we need to start with is the parameters under which we are designing.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the book says for that, but I was thinking 100-point characters to start.
Okay, Scott, if you
What's up for Mr.
Cory?
For Mr. Cory.
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting on.
I was being nice and pointing it up.
what I was just saying, wait a minute, Cory may have a little bit more.
Okay, ACT teenage heroes, hello, not babies. We're big. We're not kids.
I'm currently pulling up that as a PDF on this, but this is an old and very angsty tablet that doesn't want to go fast. So I'm waiting.
You just don't understand.
So it's your tablet.
Oh.
Y'all see what I put up with? Did you see what
She'll be here all day, folks.
All right, so the power level
I
at
live here.
100 hero points is 10D.
All right. 100 hero points, 10D. That is powerful, by the way, folks. That a 10 dice is I mean, it's not early Avengers, it's not late Teen Titans, but it is not early Teen Titans either. That is.
It's definitely in between.
You can have somebody who's picking up cars and throwing them. You can have somebody who could potentially blow a helicopter out of the sky. So they're still powerful enough to be a threat and to be to be dangerous, which I think is part of the point. Is that we have power enough to be dangerous. We're really new at it.
Boy.
So following with Cory's explanation of the premise of the setting, reminder from what Mr. Fannin said earlier, in that pretty much the cap for human is going to be 60.
And that's
amazing
Uber
sauce.
Olympic.
You just won all the Nobel Prizes ever, the best in the world at whatever that is. So while 10D is not the hero that is going to single-handedly gather up all of the nuclear weapons from the planet's stockpiles and throw them at the intergalactic enemy, they're certainly above what a human being could do to him.
Yeah, that example was taken from actual gameplay.
Yeah.
What?
So just
I was part of it.
Yes.
quick visualizer. A 4 in an attribute would be something that people would describe you as.
Yes.
Like smart, perceptive, strong, tough.
Respected professional.
Yeah, respected professional. At that point, you people. If you got like 5 and 6 in one of the skills, the talents, what they're called, as they're called, people actually will look you up and say, "Hey, I need the expert on one of the best academics in the world. Well, call Dr. Bob. He's like one of the best on the planet."
Exactly. That's a 4-5D.
Yeah.
As a point of order, I'm going to restrict the sources that you can choose from for your power types to being super and trained.
Super and trained, okay.
Groovy. Got it.
So no psychic, no magic, no tech. And innate would be if you were an alien, which...
So you're getting them strictly from training and super enhanced boosts, correct?
Yep, correct.
You know, from that laboratory that was described in the intro.
All right. Well,
Also, I'm just realizing I'm struggling to understand what you're saying because this chair is in the way and I chose a poor seating spot.
Can you see the faces now?
Yes.
all right. So for those playing along at home, and I know David Alexander in particular was asking about the character process and wanted to go slower this time to follow it. It's a point build system, and everybody will approach point build systems with conceptual ideas in their own way. It is helpful to think about who your character is prior to having powers, or in spite of, or what who if you're going through the process of I was somebody before I had powers, then it's good to think about that first. If you're going with it, I was born this way, then you want to conceptualize it differently that way. In this case, the premise that Cory's given us is that we are people who were then brought in and gone through a process to become paranormally enhanced. By the way, I'm just curious, is this by choice, or were we drafted in some way, or?
So the overall concept, actually, Jennifer, if you want to go ahead and explain that.
So the answer is going to be some of everything. You are all young adults or teens. And so in some cases, you, much like River Tam going to the best school they could find because it was the best. There are some of you who were in the foster system who, doctors came and said, we will foster you in a unique environment because your tests have shown that you're very special and will qualify for this school. And the very overburdened foster care system said, yes, please have some. So on the one hand, that's up to you, but definitely within those parameters.
So not necessarily knowing we were going to go in and suddenly be turned into this.
You knew you were going someplace because you were considered special by a doctor. You don't know what that special means. And you certainly were not expecting what you got. You were not expecting lab rat.
Okay. So in that case, I would approach this character design process with the idea that, who was I before this happened to me? So my process here is I'm going to look at my abilities, agility, intellect, might, perception, toughness, willpower, decide where I fall in that with the idea that I was a person. I might have been really good at something. I might be naturally talented, so it would justify why I would have 3s, 4s, and 5s, and maybe even a 60 in one of those. But I'm not going to go any higher than that because that's that. And then I'm going to look at my talents, and talents based on what I imagine my educational and training background is going to be. Then I'm going to go through the process of, okay, so what did this do to me? And how did I respond to that? So because the power sources are super in training, that does indicate that perhaps I did go through a training regimen. So I can go back and look at my abilities and my talents and decide how did they perhaps get enhanced, and if so, did they get enhanced above human? So long as my traits in abilities and talents stay at the 6 die level or lower, that's automatically defaulted to innate because that means I have the innate ability as a human to have those. If I have anything at 7 or higher, then I have to decide what source that is because it goes past being what a human can do. And I have to decide, if I end up with an 8 agility, is that because I trained, to get an 8 agility because I was able to do so, or did I get an 8D agility because of the super source? And I would have to indicate, in the power section that, under supers, I would say abilities, agility, and might if I decided that they were superhuman because I got enhanced. And I had to decide how I want to proceed. Now that gets to the point of what do I want to say that this process gave me as powers? And I haven't gotten to that point yet. I'm still conceptualizing who I was before I even came into this. Scott, do you have a concept that you're playing with?
Let me hop in real quick. Yeah, sorry. I was also looking up another setting thing that I was about to introduce, but I did see the question. Thanks, Dale, for trying to do that. The question was if a hero package would make sense in this particular hero package be a good pick for this. And I don't like to restrict my players overtly in that aspect of things. So if they chose to take a hero package because that's what makes sense for their character, I absolutely support that. So absolutely, if you think guys want to just choose a hero pack and say I'm going to spend 40 points or 50 points on this and just be done with it, I'm okay with that.
Right. So you know what you're talking about, right?
I was just about to ask for the book so I could look at the various hero packages.
Right.
I already have somewhat of a
Page 14. Okay.
I'm going to go with kind of an athletics kind of style. So things involving track and field.
What a shock.
Okay, so more specifically, that's awesome for numbers and crunchy bits. Sure. What is your story? Who are you?
She was within the foster system. I was a bit inspired. Similar to Barry Allen in the way that he kind of had to move in with a friend and grow up at such a young age. And he was fairly smart, but also pretty darn physical in the fact that he liked to help his friends get out and get to safety. So she was doing this kind of physical stuff so that way she could get into firefighting training and help save people that way.
Awesome. So she was training to be a firefighter. Yes. That's what she wanted to do when she grew up.
Yeah.
And
Oh my goodness.
Holy cannoli.
Oh wow.
And we have incoming, so we'll pause for a moment.
This is Glenn Thain, everyone. Glenn Thain of one of the original Champions GMs.
Hi. Hey,
What is that?
yes, you're a very active voice. I'm very proud of you.
She'll eventually come down.
New people. Weird. Hello, Riah.
Hi. Here, put that one in.
Sorry, folks.
Glenn, you are just in time to roll up a character, if you'd like.
Okay. Let me sit in this chair.
Yep.
Lock the door.
No, I was going to say, go ahead and pull it back there.
No, that's okay. I got it.
Well, actually, we'd like to add it to the wall, and then you can look up the camera and people can see you. Oh,
yes,
that's right.
yes. I said no. I said today I would throw that out the window. So don't
Oh,
worry.
well, very good then, sir. If you actually want to have a spot at the table, we have a spot right there. Glenn, this is my daughter Samantha.
Hi.
Hi.
That is Cory and Seabolt. Our friend Scott Crossan. I think you met Cory. Probably met Jennifer at GameCon as well.
Yes.
And then this is our housemate Donavin.
Hi, Donavin. Pleasure.
It's okay. So this is many of our local gaming crew. So I'm really glad you had a chance to come and meet us. And again, by way of introduction, if you saw, I did a special update talking about Glenn Thain's versus. And it was such a thrill because he's one of the first people to run the Champions game outside of the original creators. I'm very much part of that crew. So I had a huge influence on a lot of the original developments. It's a real pleasure to have you here and involved with us today.
Thank you.
So Cory is doing we're going to actually doing a character creation process for people online to kind of see us go through the process.
Because I didn't know. I had no idea how you do that. So
we will do a quick recap of the premise.
So basically, we're looking at sort of a 90s sort of scenario where of early teens, late teens superheroes who come into some massive power, and how do they deal with that power and explore the world around them and how they fit into it. You can think of Teen Titans, Gen X, Ben 13, those types of comics.
And the specific premise is that we all got recruited either because we were special students and there were, our parents were wanting us to get into a special exclusive program of some kind, or foster care, talented, but not in the in the system, or some other way in which these doctors would come and say, you're special, we want you to come and do a special thing, without knowing that we were going to then be experimented on and given powers.
Oh, we were experimenting on. That's cool.
So
That's the best way to
what
give
were you
people
saying
powers.
about the firefighter training? And
So I was just going to suggest, with the character that you're coming up with, to help tie you into the story, that perhaps much like sometimes people who are thinking about going into the military or OTC, they will be recruited. Someone similar, under the guise of you want to be a firefighter, you want to be a hero, you want to help people. Let's help you get there, and you were recruited into this academy.
I like that route. Let's go with it.
All right.
It's interesting that we're going that came up because my concept that I'm starting to build in my head has an academy related thing, but I didn't want to step on anybody else's ideas. If anybody else had an idea they want to throw out.
I'm still noodling.
Scott, do you have an idea you're playing with?
I'm kind of noodling still.
Right.
I also tend to, because of my inability to write anything that's legible by human standards, tend to type everything out.
Okay, well, we're not going to be able to do that today.
Understood.
So if you
that's
want,
why I'm just kind of hanging.
If you want one of us to write notes down for you, we can do that. Actually, as a matter of fact, Jennifer, I'm sure, could probably give you a hand with that. If you want to throw ideas out and then have her handle that for you. What I'm going with is, so I actually have a background I'm going to play off of my own personal background when do a what if.
I promise you're not going to need all the sixes.
Nope.
No, probably not.
Not all of them, but it's awesome that he has them.
A decent amount.
But it's awesome that he has them.
I mean, you see mine?
Oh, by the way, Steve Peterson was actually on a little while ago. He couldn't get his audio to work, so he couldn't do the full co-host thing.
Oh.
He was on chatting. He's going to come back later and try to get on and do the co-host thing.
Thanks again, Dale.
By the way, that dice.
Oh.
So, someone who spent his whole life to get into one of the military academies. And was going to go to West Point and got the appointment and everything, and then was approached by these very impressive people and told, we can put you in a program that will be much better for you. And they actually had to work hard at him to get him to do it, but they finally, there was a whole package of stuff they offered that included helping his family with their financial difficulties. And that was it. Anything he could do to help his family get out of their financial difficulties was going to be the sell. So he went in, he went for it. And so he's already going to have a general baseline physical capacity because he was training to get into the academy. And he's going to have the intellectual capacities as well. That's as far as I've gone. I haven't decided what he ends up manifesting. I mean, so is the idea, would they target to try to give a specific power set, or it comes up random? Okay. I'm tempted to look at the random character creation rules that Glenn came up with. That's a new thing. By the way, there is a system to do random. It's not absolute. You still have to make some decisions, but it's a random generating system that guides the process a little bit.
Sean, I'm so glad that you volunteered to demonstrate exactly how that works for our live studio audience.
Let's do that, shall we?
Totally.
I think that's a great idea. All right.
By the way, I think I called the character idea.
Oh, very cool.
I totally was accepted because I'm totally so great with my grades. I just don't ever look at anything.
Well, yeah, because it was just so totally awesome. I have no idea. So good for you.
And the power set that I get is pretty much I just tell people that they can do awesome, and they do awesome.
I heard a rumor.
I heard a rumor.
You were thinking it.
I was thinking.
Okay.
And then
I'm confused. So am I.
It's
umbrella.
The luck. See, I haven't seen that.
I haven't either.
Me neither.
So I just pulled it out of my brain hole, which is where I keep what's supposed to be my brain.
It's really good.
But no, it's the idea of the luck that everybody was talking about earlier.
The darkness.
So the luck manipulator.
Of the dark deconstruction of hero stuff. But don't get me wrong, I hear it is fantastic, and I am going to watch it. I just right now I'm in an upbeat space, so I want to wait until I'm in a better headspace that I can watch it and not get depressed.
Get the DC streaming service and watch Batman Brave and Bold, and it will put you in a good superhero space.
It is more mature, but it's not necessarily dark. It's not 4-color, but it's definitely not as dark as everybody says it is.
All right, so I'm going to use the random system. Now, since Cory has already established that certain things are restricted, because you can randomly generate, for example, what source your powers are going to be primarily based on. We already know it's going to be training and or super, so I'm just going to make sure that my stuff, my other choices are based on that. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the section that says archetypes. And here's the fun part. I haven't seen this yet. I literally am looking at this for the first time, and I'm one of the co-designers, but this was a new idea that he came up with while I was busy with some other things. So I'm actually seeing and playing with this for the first time. So one of the things that you do for the random is you roll 2 6-sided dice to generate a combination of a number and a second number, and it corresponds to a random thing here. So this one, which is my MarsCon die, which we got a bunch of MarsCon die for being guests. Corinne was guest of honor at MarsCon in Virginia.
I bought them.
Oh, you bought them? Okay.
Yes, I bought them.
Well, she bought them, but she was guest of honor at MarsCon anyway. So, and then I'm using the P&PUE die that David and Kim Forby had made for a special as the other one. And yes, we are going to look at making these swag available after, but we didn't want to tie it to Kickstarter because we don't want to be dependent on a ship from China to make sure stuff gets to you. So the white die will be the first spot, and the P&PUE die will be the second spot. And I roll right off the table.
Okay.
So I will roll a 6-3 the way this works. So we scroll up and see what that gives me. Telepath. You can send thoughts and read and maybe assault and or control minds. not
right.
even remotely where I was going. And since you didn't want psychic source, do you want me to re-roll that? Or do you want? Are you okay with a telepath, but the power is super source instead?
Yeah, you can, as long as it's the source is super. I don't care what power you have for that.
It's going to manifest like a psi, though, is the point, because telepathy. So I don't know if it breaks the concept of the world.
No, because
it's still super.
Yeah, I understand, but because psychic wasn't a source, I didn't know if that meant you'd rather not have psionics.
No, psionics as a power is fine.
Cool.
It's just it's coming from not a psychic source. It is coming from a super source.
All right. So my archetype will be telepath, which means I will use that to guide my other decisions on my power set. Motivation, I'll figure out my motivation as a role-playing decision. And that's actually it, by the way, guys. There's no other, there's not like you don't randomly generate the individual powers, because there's just too many awesome combinations and whatever that, and we're trying to come up with a random generator that got that deep was not going to work. But what that did is it basically, helped me come up with a place to go if there was going to be a randomly generated result of powers from the process. I decided to actually let it be random, and that table lets me do that. There's a crap ton, by the way, of archetypes on here: acrobat, archer or gunslinger, battlesuit beast, blaster or marksman. Skipping down a bit, life drinker, lucky, magicians. Skip a bit more, we get down to shapeshifters and size changers. So it's a pretty awesome system for, I don't know what I want to be, so I'm going to roll a couple of dice and see. That's a really neat way to go.
Question.
Yeah.
Is there any plans to have the actual archetypes available for quick play for characters?
Well, we have pre-gens that would follow. Yeah, so there are pre-generated characters, but they're actually named and established. I like the idea of having an archetype someone could grab and then turn into their personal character, so I will pursue that. But it's not.
Okay.
It's not a right now thing.
That we can immediately do.
It's So what you're talking about is similar, like what we did with Freedom Squadron, where we had the archetypes. They weren't named. You took them, made your character, and then you came up with the code name afterwards. Yeah. I like that idea. I may do that as a Modern Gods thing.
Okay.
So now I'm gonna do the hero package, which is 40 points out of the 100 that I have to play with, and that will give me 3s in all of my abilities and 2 in all of my talents. And then I'm going to figure out where his studies took him, and I'm going to raise those up. The archetype I have isn't really going to affect them, I think, except for my willpower. I think there's a good chance that my willpower will go up, and that may end up being something I spend points on to a superhuman level. The other abilities I'll probably have pretty decently, just because physically fit, military type. And then I got to start making some decisions about what powers I want. So that's where I am with my process at this point.
I'm actually going to pick the superhero package, which is 50 points, which gives you 3s in everything.
All right.
Probably because Kelly just got so good at school. It's sickening.
All right, so that's 50 of your 100 right there.
Yep. But that kind of gives the whole idea that, whatever you feel, whatever you pumped into her, just
Please make her cheerleader.
made her. Of course, totally.
Okay.
Okay.
So do you want me to track the notes on his choices, or do you want to do it, or how you want to handle it?
If you could.
Wow.
So I am going to put one other caveat out there.
Okay.
That I'm going to give you a special con that affects all of your powers. So any source power that you have will have the shutdown con, and I'm going to give you 4 points for that because it affects all of your powers, not just one.
So anything that we have that follows under the super's source as a minus level 4 shutdown, because -4 means it could happen pretty frequently.
That it is a modified version of that. It means because normally in the cons you would be applying that to a very specific power, and so Normally at a -1, it would be a rarely shut down, but because it affects all of your powers, I'm giving it to, the full -4.
So, to clarify, if I buy a single telepathic power, does it have -4? And then if I buy a second, it also has -4? Or are you saying, buy all my powers, don't worry about that con, and at the end of it, take 4 points back because it's
The latter.
The latter.
Okay, so it's a -4 package.
Right.
con.
Correct.
Got it. Because with that, I'm half tempted to just take omnipower, narrow telepathy, and just that be the power source. And the reason why I would do that is because I'm kind of a power player. I know the rules really well, so I could easily play with that. However, this would be the point where Cory would very rightfully tell me
no,
because with the nature of the game being what it is, that could be very
question mark there.
well, it would be very game breaking, right? And I recognize that if I were sitting in his chair, I'd be like Sean with an omnipower. Nope. In a game that's supposed to be about teenagers figuring out how to use their powers.
Yeah, no.
Oh, can we retcon that and ask me?
Huh?
Let's retcon that and ask me instead. I totally count as a GM. You could ask me.
Turn around. He was sitting in the GM chair. Sorry, just by default. So I think an omnipower with narrow focused telepathy would be a great idea.
I think that neither you nor Donavin are ever allowed to have omnipowers at my table, but thank you so much for asking.
Totally fair.
I have a question.
And to be fair, Len actually said this. He has said this on camera before, that for newer games and for GMs especially who are getting their feet under them running this, they really should consider saying no at first to omnipowers and also elemental controls, quite frankly, because elemental controls are effectively omnipowers with a serious thematic kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
but
GM,
I loves them.
I know, but GMs should be very comfortable with the rules and comfortable with their running the game before they have players who are using those kinds of things, because they're incredibly creative and open-ended and awesome, as Glenn here very, very, very effectively established his first time out playing Arcano and completely owning every scene with his magical omnipower. And I've been doing so many ways that just I had to really be quick on my feet to manage. So those are the kinds of things that GMs should feel free to say no to. There would be stop sign powers in the original Champions for those who recognize what that is. So yes, I actually very, very intentionally said that for us to have that conversation.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And this is kind of a wonky question.
That's because it's you, dear.
So for the shrink power, is there a pro I can put in there where the smaller I get, the stronger I get? I.e. a la Ant-Man.
Did you?
Yeah, I saw where you were going with that.
Did you look up shrink? Because it's right in there.
I looked at it. I didn't see anything that caught my eye with that.
You might want to read it absolutely thoroughly.
See, since you have brought up the question on camera, I would be very grateful if you would actually read that out to our live studio audience.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's going to read out loud, so I don't interrupt him.
You can shrink, becoming as small as shown on the table below, and lowering your weight rank by the current shrink rate until it reaches 0 die. You can substitute your current shrink rate for your agility. You also gain leaping and strike equal to half your current strength rate. If you already have these traits at greater rank, then use the rank plus 1d instead. As discussed on Chapter 4, your size may also make it easier for you to hide from others and avoid human-sized attacks.
Look at the pros.
There's no pro listed.
There used to be.
There's no pro.
Which was the thing I was going to bring up. You have pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
You call them pros and cons all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that you have no way to be able to really reference what a pro is other than by going to pro. And what a con is, you could easily put them under the heading adjustment powers or adjustment alternatives or adjustment.
In the very, very first part of the character creation system, it talks about pros and cons. It talks about it extensively, what a pro does, what a con does.
Okay.
So it is all there. It's in the initial paragraphs of starting out the process of building characters. All right, so it's actually embedded in the shrinking power. The fact that it can give you a strike ability that is tied to your shrinking. So really, what you're talking about is the fact that when they shrink, they can leap and hit things harder than normal. So it is literally embedded into the shrink power. Now, if you really also want I get crazy strong, like super strength, then that's called boost. You take the boost power and you boost a specific trait such as might, and you make it with the con limited only while shrunk.
Okay, that's just what I need.
And then you would ask Cory to decide what the con value is for that. Like a -1 or a -2. But since likely when most of the time you're doing your superheroing stuff, you're probably going to be shrunk. It would be probably a fairly low point value.
So what would it be?
Basically, boost might only when shrunk.
Yeah.
Again, that's Cory's call. Or Jennifer's call.
Yeah.
Sorry, co-GMing.
It can be taught.
I do that.
Question from the virtual class. Saw a raised hand.
I'm trying to answer those.
Tiny.
So Dale's online. Klein, do you have a thought for what kind of background you're thinking for a game like this?
I was thinking a scientist assistant in training.
Okay.
He's taking high school science classes. He's really interested in genetics.
Okay.
He winds up finding out about a doctor who's working on this particular program, along with variations, and he needs somebody to go ahead and figure out the calculations on the variations to make sure that they're all going to hang together chemically.
Mm-hmm.
So minor amounts of testing in the lab, plus hands-on talking with people who wind up getting changed, wind up getting him exposed in a general fashion to this concept of the powers and everything. And what they didn't realize was that all of the changes that they made in people, they gave a booster drug in order to effect the change to actually happen. And that booster drug, for a very limited amount of time, was transferable by touch.
Okay.
So
Accidental exposure.
leaked out of these guys, and all of a sudden he went from being this scientist really taken with the idea of a program like this to being one of the test subjects.
Interesting. So do you have a power set in mind that goes with that?
No, I didn't. What I was going to do was I was going to go your route, which was go with random, since it hasn't been tested out all that much, and we can see what we can come up with.
Okay. Well, Cory, that all sound good to you? Jen?
Yeah.
All right. So I'd say pick a couple of dice. Different colors probably works here.
Yeah, that'll work.
Which one do you want to say is your first?
All right. There are 3-1.
3-1 is force manipulator.
Specifically for the question that was on the QA,
Force fields.
a WoW shaman totem bearer thing would definitely probably fall under the Omni Power, and probably might give it the con like items or equipment or something of that nature, since you specifically have to set out something to do that. But I'd also probably give the pro of like area, so that it does the entire thing of the scene rather than just one specific person or something like that nature.
A more detailed version of the answer I gave earlier.
Cool. So Glenn generated force constructs and force manipulation as the archetype.
Okay.
Girl, where are you at?
So since I saw the grow and shrink powers, I decided to take them both.
Of course you did.
Of course. Because it goes from minimum of 3 inches to 40 foot.
Okay.
Only 40?
Only 40. 11 gets me 50.
Cory, stop helping. All right, girl, where are you at?
I'm not dreaming yet.
So this is one good thing about Prowlers and Paragons. I have a very simple. I came up with the concept rather quickly. Very simple. Grow shrink, which is typical size changer.
Grow shrink cheerleader, yeah.
And I'm taking 3 powers: grow, shrink, and luck, because why not?
Okay.
And it's very simple. It's not. I'm not looking at charts and trying to figure out the hard. Because shrink is 2 points per power. I'm not adding any other cons because adding the strength doesn't really need to add because of the strike. But I don't have to go in and look at, what's the square root of the hypotenuse to figure out, where I am. It's pretty simple.
Yep.
And luck's 3 points a 3 points a level, so.
Mm-hmm.
So, little trick I use when I'm making characters, when you take a package, it presets your abilities and your talents. So the package I took preset all of my abilities at 3 dice and presets my talents at 2 dice each. So they're all set based on me spending 40 points
And,
of my
and
100.
I can't remember. Can you then spend additional points to raise them
Absolutely.
up past
Yes.
that?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
to that point, I went ahead and adjusted my abilities to where I want them based on both my original concept and the idea that this program altered me slightly. So I set my agility at 4 dice, my intellect at 4 dice, might I'm leaving at 3 dice, perception at 3, toughness at 4, and my willpower at 8 dice. Because as I said, with the telepathic archetype, I figure that will cause my willpower to go up really high. So what I've done is just a quick little trick for character making in terms of spending your points. I added those values 4 plus 4 plus 3 all the way up to the willpower for 26 points, and then I'm subtracting out, since all of my abilities defaulted to 3 dice, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. So it's 26 minus 18 means I spent 8 additional points on my abilities. So in terms of going through the literal mechanical process of building my character, I put down that I spent 40 points on the hero package, and I've spent 8 additional points on my abilities. Now I'm going to go through and figure out where I want my talents to be, and then I will total them up when I'm done. And then because there are 12 talents and they're all started at 2 dice, whatever my total is after I write that up, I will subtract out 24, and that'll be the additional amount I've spent on my talents.
In the meantime, Samantha, you look like you've been having questions. Share them with the class, because odds are, while you're having questions making up this character,
Sure.
other people who are making up a character will also have that question. So what's up?
I was trying to figure out how to work out the superhero package. This is actually the first time creating the character on my own with no other individuals physically helping me with this.
Look at you. That's fantastic.
So I'm hardcore struggling, but I'm slowly learning.
Okay. So do you have any specific questions?
I know that it costs 50 hero points, and you have the base rank of abilities 3D and talents 3D. And I was listening to Dad explaining the process with the hero package, but I was trying to connect the dots and failing.
Okay. So my suggestion is, since you have a pencil, not a pen anyway, write a 3 in all of those slots to begin with. All right. You have spent half of your points. You have 50 points left to play with.
Right.
Right? So next, think about your concept and think about your powers, have you figured out what superpowers are going to manifest through this testing?
I feel like some kind of enhanced strength to be able to physically carry people out and get them to safety is kind of
Okay.
the thing.
So remember, what did Cory say your dice cap is?
10.
Correct. So you could put up to 7 of your 50 remaining points into into that, right? So that would be a place for you to start. Start by spending your points on what's important to your character concept.
Mhm.
And then with whatever points you have left, just kind of fill in the gaps to round out the character as a whole. Okay?
So, just kind of a quick thing.
Mhm.
This is the third Prowess and Paragons character I've built.
Okay.
Third. It took me about the same amount of time as it takes to build a Savage Worlds character. Which Savage Worlds is notorious for being extremely fast character builds.
Mm-hmm.
This is, you can make a decent super. Admittedly, I'm not going for a super complex concept.
That's what I did. I'm using my
But
calculator.
it bears noting that it was really straightforward and simple for you just to, hey, look, I have a character now, let's go.
Yeah.
So
It's-
absolutely good point. Thank you.
So, because that's the complaint with other super settings or systems is, I'd love to play champions. I just don't have 16 hours to build a character before the game.
Right. And yay for that, because if this was a crunchy math system, I wouldn't be a part of it. I have to put too fine a point on it. And Len knows that. Len actually told me flat out that one of the reasons he wrote it was for people like me. Which I'm very grateful for.
I used to run and play GURPS and champions.
Right.
And so, played a lot of the crunchy systems.
Right. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, and that's awesome for people who dig that sort of thing. But as we established, a couple hours back when Sean was asking me why I got, how I got into role playing in the first place, and for me, it was from the completely opposite side of I want to be able to tell a story. By having a very simple character build like this does, helps to facilitate that.
For a long time, that wasn't a consideration for most people who gamed.
Yeah.
They came out of the wargaming environment.
Right.
And the way that you role played was very static and very constant. You were in a constant situation where you couldn't extend your personality into the numbers to make it work.
Right.
And so systems up to champions and a little bit beyond went the whole number route because that's how we grew up. We grew up, doing, well, okay, you want to do strength. Okay, well, you should have some sort of a defense. Yeah, okay, well, that should be based on strength, shouldn't it? Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
So the aspect of, I want to tell a great story was not indicative to how people role played on the average.
Right.
And that wound up being something that games like Icons and this one taught people, in a very good way. They basically, I like villains and vigilantes. I like the concept behind them, but I like Superhero 2044. Did you ever see Superhero 2044? Superhero 2044 was the very first superhero game that ever got turned out. Bing, boom, boom. They threw this thing out on the table, and they basically then said, okay, well, you have the power you have fire powers, okay? What does that mean? What do I do? How do I do it? Well, I'll write up what you can do with your fire powers, and you had to draft a paragraph for 2044 on how your powers worked with the game master, or the game master just provided you with that paragraph.
Okay.
And that was the establishment of what you could do inside the system to be able to do, do things with your powers. And that was very number oriented also, so you couldn't exceed your number values in a lot of
Right.
cases. You wound up going, well, I should be able to, whereas this system lets you get away with, well, I want to do this kind of a thing. Are you okay with that? Yeah, go ahead and roll your dice, and we'll see what
happens. Yeah.
We'll see what happens. It'll be great. And so this system and the other icon system were the ones that broke the water in being able to tell people, you know what, you can tell good stories. You can get away with telling good stories, and everybody can have a good time.
Right. Love it.
And the thing is, I remember those old war games. I grew up on Avalon Hill and Victory Games and Squad Leader and Advanced Squad Leader.
First game I ever saw was Gettysburg, Avalon Hill Gettysburg.
Right.
First game I actually got a chance to play was Panzerblitz. I borrowed my buddy's Panzerblitz game and didn't give it back to him for 4 or 5 months. And every night when I got home from high school, I would I'd pick a scenario card and I'd go, okay, the Russians do that and the Germans do that. And I'd set it all up and run it. And I would run it with the idea that the Germans had this kind of a mindset when they went into combat, and the Russians had this kind of a mindset. So if things start to happen, they happen. And it was the very first war game I ever got was Panzerblitz. My parents got it for me because I had Jack's Panzerblitz and wouldn't give it back. And I wound up running those scenarios for 4 years until I learned how to beat every situation that the game could come up with and make it work. And as we went down, D&D started it with the way that they were structured, but even early D&D could encourage you to role play if you thought beyond some of the limitations, like what do they mean by 2 men? What does that do? Well, if you write chainmail, you knew that, well, 2 men, you roll 2d6, and so it was that kind of a thing that it came out of. And as they went into Greyhawk, they structurified it even more because they were really loose on structure in the old days. And the D&D game I picked up and took home, I opened up the first book and started reading and went, what the hell is this? Oh, okay, well, maybe I'm reading the wrong book here. Maybe I should read Worlds and I should read the third book. And so I picked up the third book and I went, this should probably tell me it's all about campaigns and all that kind of stuff. And I went, yeah, okay. I don't know what to do.
So real quick, we had a question. Sean, the question specifically was, is it better to go with the hero package and add from there? Or can you subtract from, say, the superhero package and then subtract a rank from academics and professional down to 2D and get two hero drives?
Cannot subtract. Cannot subtract it. Once you buy a hero package, you must have those ranks. You can only add to them. Hey, Brett.
Hello.
You can speak.
You guys are gonna have to make a roll.
Yes, we will.
I will get it.
I need to go.
I can sit on the inside by Cory if you guys want. I don't care.
Riah,
The room of
delayed
rest.
reaction there, honey. Mr. Fannin, if you could give a blank character sheet to do we need to print out one?
We might need to.
I would love to facilitate one.
I sent that to Donavin from the computer.
That's fine.
Play chameleon.
Oh, we're not doing that. We're doing a.
Brand new, total new, everything.
We're actually going through the character creation process for a new campaign.
Okay. Well, I just so happened to have a character I was kind of working on, so.
Well, it's a
Though I
very
didn't
specific setting.
That's fine. We can catch you up.
Teenagers
You might
and
need
young
to
adults
adjust.
who apparently have these specific genetic markers and have been recruited by this team of scientists who are bent on creating super soldiers and imbuing them with powers that they can control whether they work or not.
Wait, that the scientists can control.
Correct.
Fun. Okay.
We're essentially becoming controllable Steve Rogers
Nice.
with an off switch.
So, kind of the concept of, we're going back to sort of like Teen Titans, Gen 13, New Mutants, Generation X, those sorts of comics, where it's, teenagers that have suddenly been imbued with a lot of power, and how do they handle that, explore how they develop their powers, how they interact with the world around them, possibly with some other setting elements that are incorporated that might push them onto the
You're
fringe
going
of
into a
things.
situation where you're rescuing people from fire.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm
And
saying you're the best
basically,
Okay.
character creation limitations
There's nothing wrong with
was
that.
100
Pointing out, so you
hero points to
realize
start, 10D die cap,
people come to you for their
and you which can only be taken from the supers and trained power sets or power sources.
Okay.
And you will get a bonus
That's what I was trying to say.
at the
From that
sort of
computer.
end of your character creation point total there, getting a special 4-point quad that of shutdown. So
There's
that
a flame
applies
right
to all of
there.
your supers.
The one I gave him was flame.
Brett, hand that to her so that she can.
Photocopy it?
Yes.
Okay.
Because yours does have the scanner and it can just be used as a photocopier.
I'm going to.
Corinne,
Yep.
when you pull it forward, be very careful that the cords don't pull out.
Yes.
I would like to play a character called Arsenal who can pull weapons out of dimensional portals. Will that work?
Don't look at me. I'm not GM.
Oh, who's GM?
Look at him.
Oh, he's GM.
Cory
How
and,
did that work?
Cory and Jennifer have set this up. I'm a player.
Yes, you can.
And I probably have like teleport too. So
Yeah, cool. You can do that.
is it modern setting or?
Yeah, modern setting.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was not listening to you. I was busy doing my thing. Is it something you need me to know? Okay. I'm not the game master. That's the game master. Jennifer's the game master. I'm just helping.
Did you have a question?
For the kind of concept that I'm working with the firefighting,
Uh-huh.
to explain why she got put into the foster system,
Uh-huh.
her home essentially, there was an accidental house fire that got set off,
Okay.
and she's the only survivor
Okay.
from that situation. So she had to learn how to really toughen up and help others similar in that situation,
Okay.
which kind of drove her to be on the path that she's on now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ken. So, just as a catch up to my current process with my character, we already covered the background, which was that he was going to go to one of the military academies. These mysterious government officials came and convinced his family that there was a very special, exclusive academy that if I went, they would receive all kinds of financial benefits. So I decided to go along with it. So that's how I got into this program. I rolled random to determine what kind of archetype I ended up with, and I ended up with the telepath archetype. So we've gone through and did my abilities, and so using the hero package, and then I spent 8 more points on my abilities. I also spent 8 more points on talents. So I decided that academics 4D because he was that he was advanced in academics, not super genius, but he is advanced and knowledgeable. Charm 2D. I'm going to go with the idea that he's not that charming. He's very focused and very military, and just did not develop the whole cool suave dobone or whatever. Command 4D though, because he's got that military bearing and that military training. He was in ROTC. Well, JROTC, but he did very well with that, so he has a strong command ability. Covert operations, not a sneaky bone in his body, really. He can sort of hide behind stuff. 2D investigation, he's not a trained investigator. doesn't really know that much about medicine, could put a bandage around something and knows to put pressure on stuff. I ended up buying 3D science because the original idea is he was going to get into the astronaut, try to get into the astronaut program or some tech program. So his science skills are slightly higher. I also bought survival 3D because, again, military training. He knows a little bit about survival. Not like her 5D, where she's like someone that experts would go to and ask to help them with a survival challenge. I also bought tech and vehicles at 3D because, again, he's got a little bit more of a background. He knows his way around computers a little bit, and he, learned how to drive different kinds of vehicles pretty decently. So that was 8 more points spent to up some of my talents. Now I started working on my powers.
That's
and with that, you want to go through go through a book and kind of do a pick list approach. I looked at psychometry. As a telepath, being able to do the whole stop and read psychic impressions off of an object is really cool. Psychometry has a base, just straight up cost of 9D. There's no dice involved in psychometry. It's not a ranked power. You can do it or not. It's sort of a plot point thing. It costs 9. I took the concentration con, which is -4. So this is not a thing I could possibly do in combat. If I tried, it'd be really dangerous. Plus, it's really not going to work anyway because I also took delay. It takes 1d6 minutes for me to start being able to get an impression off of something. So this is very much an out-of-combat ability because each of those cons are worth -4. I only end up spending 1 point on psychometry. Now, I have to spend a point, so there is no point in me coming up with any additional cons for that unless I just want to for roleplay purposes. I've literally spent, I've bought, -8 points on top of a 9-point power. So unless I want to add a pro to it, it's just going to cost me a point. Stun, I want the ability to just throw out a psychic backlash kind of thing as an offensive ability. So I took 10 dice of stun. I may decide to go back and drop my stuff down to 9 dice so that I can have more resolve. But right now I'm building a trait cap to see how it looks and how my points look. So 10 dice of stun is 1 point per. There is no baseline rank for it, so it'll be 10 points. But I took the exclusive con on it, which only works if you put exclusive on at least one other power. What that means is that if it's exclusive, any other powers that also have the exclusive con, you can't use it at the same time. I also put exclusive on my telepathy, which I'll explain. So 1 point con for that, and then I took the recharge ability. So he can lash out psychically, but it's kind of tiring. So he has to wait 2 more pages before he can do it again. So he can't just keep going stun, stun, stun. If he unleashes a psychic blast like that,
he has to take a moment to recollect himself.
Yeah, so he can't use it every page. So that dropped the cost for that down to 5. Telepath, so it should obviously have telepathy, which is also a 1 point per. Took 10 dice of telepathy. I decided to take the Mind Link Pro, which is specifically attached to telepathy. What that means is I can set up the mental communication system so that everybody else in the team can be mentally communicated with and linked at all times. And that's 2 point pro, so that would be 12 total points. I also put the exclusive on it, so that's my most expensive power in terms of actual cost, 11. So right now we're looking at 40 plus 8 is 48, plus another 8 is 56, plus 1 point for concentrate for psychometry, 57. 5 points for the stun becomes 62, then 73. So I've spent 73 points at this point out of my 100. I know I'm going to get 4 points back for the ultimate, package con thing. So I've still got a few points left to spend. So where I'm thinking I'm going to go is martial training to actually have, so that I'm not just dependent on my telepathic abilities, but, for example, I can actually fight and defend myself at what I would consider is probably a superhuman level. Because I'm thinking that might be a cool combination with being a telepath. So that's where I'm going right now with my character creation ideas, and I have a few more points that I can spend there.
So that 70 included the 40 that you spent on your...
Yeah.
Okay.
I currently have 36 points left to spend total.
So
not including the cons.
You guys will definitely want to look at cons for certain kinds of powers because that's going to give you a few more points back. The con system is not a tweakable, like back in Champions days, you could use the limitation system to really tweak the crap out of your character and get ridiculous amounts of power for far less
and it's a special
points
con
than would make sense.
Applies to all of your supers.
And so people who were really masters of that system could really abuse the hell out of it.
Totally
This
for the characters.
doesn't
Basically,
do
instead
that
of
same
100
thing.
points,
You
you're
can
really
shave a
looking
few
at
points here. and shave a few points there.
So we're not taking it as a.
What's interesting is at the higher levels, it means less than it does at a lower level campaign. So when you're building, just better than normal people, that 1 point per, that 2 points off, or that 4 points off is far more meaningful than if you're building, 150 point high level characters. You're not having to shave off, which is actually makes a certain amount of sense because Superman doesn't have a lot of limitations on his eye blast and his strength. There's something that would make it harder for him to use them. But Green Arrow, having points shaved off his abilities because he's a lower point level character, shaving those points off is going to be more meaningful for him.
The idea was to create a toolbox by which you could build whatever it was that you wanted to use it